Hello everyone, and welcome back to Threadbare Reviews. Today's subject is the recommendation of patron Ratatosk, who thought that the book Sundiver would be a good choice. The book was written by author David Brin in 1980, and it would be the first entry of his Uplift Universe series. About the author. David Brin was born to a Jewish family in Glendale, California, one of the larger suburbs of Los Angeles. He got his bachelor's degree in science at the California Institute of Technology, and he went on to earn a doctorate in astrophysics at the University of California, San Diego. He stayed on at the university as a researcher for several years after that, but he also managed to publish Sundiver a year before he got his doctorate. Brin continues to live in San Diego, but these days he makes his living by writing fiction and nonfiction, and through consultations and public speaking engagements. Around half of Brin's novels, 2 sets of 3, are set in his Uplift setting. The basic idea of the setting is that most sapient spacefaring species were uplifted or genetically modified into having sapience by an older spacefaring species. Humans are an extremely rare exception because we evolved sapiens naturally and managed to achieve spaceflight without killing ourselves in the process. Not only that, but we also started uplifting 2 Earth species, chimps and dolphins, before we made first contact with the intergalactic community. That earned us some instant prestige, along with more than a few enemies. The idea of uplifting non-sapient species goes back to at least H.G. Wells and the Island of Dr. Moreau, but I believe Brin's series is the reason why uplift is now the standard term for the process. Brin has said that he wrote these books as a response to earlier works and the way they treat uplifted creatures, but I'll get more to those details in the analysis. Aside from the Uplift series, you may also be familiar with Brin's novel The Postman, which was published in 1985 and adapted into a movie in 1997. The main villains of The Postman are a right-wing militia group that tore America apart after a crisis, so that should give you a hint about Brin's politics. David Brin generally writes hard science fiction that tries to present a realistic vision of the future. Outside of fiction, Brin is a futurist, a person who speculates about how technology and society will change in the coming years, and what we as people living today should concern ourselves with. For instance, in 1998, he wrote the book The Transparent Society, which was about how to preserve privacy in a world with growing amounts of surveillance, online communication, and databases. And apparently he's still at it, and still up to date, because Brin has one of the most modern author websites I have ever come across. He's also active on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. The review. Sundiver begins just a few years after the first contact was made between humans and the Galactic Society. Both sides are still getting used to each other, but so far Earth has managed to buy the rights to several space colonies and a satellite branch of the Galactic Library, the storehouse of all the knowledge gathered by the Galactic Society over the past millions of years. Earth scientists are all playing catch-up and trying to learn what the aliens already know, but there's one scientific project which was not cancelled: the Sundiver, which has discovered 2 types of living creature in the chromosphere of the Sun, creatures that are not described in the Galactic Library. The protagonist, Jacob Demois, has been brought on board the Sundiver project because he has a reputation for being an investigator and a problem solver who can handle crisis situations, and the project leader, Dr. Kepler, suspects that there's something going on. Sure enough, the chimp who commands the solo Sundiver pod dies because of sabotage, and there are a good half-dozen suspects on the Mercury base, both human and alien, who might have had a motive to kill him. Jacob eventually realizes that not 1 but 2 of the aliens tried to sabotage the project for different reasons, and when Jacob discovers the second saboteur, the alien almost manages to destroy the second Sundiver ship. However, Jacob and his allies stop him just in time and earn themselves and the human race a happy ending. First off, I'd like to mention that when I asked for psychological science fiction works, I did not expect my patrons to take me quite so literally. At the start of the book, Jacob Demois is dealing with the death of his wife, who died a few years ago during one of his previous adventures. He's used self-hypnosis to lock away his darker impulses in an alter ego identity so that he can focus on working through his grief, but over the course of the book he realizes that he was actually just fooling himself and trying to avoid his grief by ignoring it. What I find most remarkable about all of this is that it is the most accurate portrayal of hypnosis in fiction that I have ever come across. In real life, hypnosis does put you in a suggestible state, but the suggestions still have to be what the hypnotized person would consider reasonable. Stage hypnotists can get people to bark like dogs or walk like chickens because, on some level, their subjects want to act like fools in front of an audience. No one can be hypnotized without their consent, and aside from a few rare individuals, you'll always remember what you hear and do during a hypnosis session. So what happens to Jacob is surprisingly realistic. He uses self-hypnosis sessions to bolster his natural coping mechanisms, and while he thinks about it in terms of a split personality, his mind never actually splits. Jacob is always in full control of himself, and when the Mr. Hyde personality takes over, that just means that Jacob has stopped holding himself back. Something else I appreciate is that the future government in Sundiver is not at all utopian. Planet Earth has a single united government, but that government recognizes both regular citizens and probationers, humans who have failed a psychological test that checks for violent tendencies and who are forced to live on reservations away from everyone else. This system is not at all portrayed as positive. Jacob's extended family is politically active, and they hate the probationer system, since when you expect the worst from someone, they often behave badly because they have no reward for being nice. Part of the resolution of the book is finding a way to disrupt the status quo of the probationer system. Earth is also divided when it comes to dealing with the Galactic Society. On the one side is the group that wants to embrace the Galactic Society, and who believe that some long-vanished aliens must have partially uplifted us. If we can only discover who those aliens were, we'll have an established lineage and a noble status among the civilized species of the galaxy. On the other side is the group that says that humans should be proud of how we climbed onto the galactic stage using nothing but our own efforts. We don't even need that high and mighty Galactic Society. The characters of Sundiver are very well written, especially when you consider that this book is a murder mystery along with being science fiction. Most of the characters come off as one-dimensional caricatures in the first few chapters, but as the plot progresses, and as Jacob learns what's really going on, all of the characters have an opportunity to surprise the reader with hidden depths, unexpected reactions, or disguised motives. If you think you know where the mystery is going after reading the first third of the book, keep going, because you're probably wrong. All in all, I'd say Sundiver is just as worth reading today as it was in 1980. The analysis. Sundiver touches on a lot of themes throughout its length, including the psychology of grief and denial I mentioned during the review section. However, if I had to point to any one thing as being the book's main theme, it would be the conflict between cultural identity and modernization. When the Europeans started exploring the world, they brought with them new technology and new ideas, not just a lust for gold, trade, and conquest. The various nations and cultures they encountered reacted in different ways. For instance, the Cherokee largely embraced European technology and aspects of their culture, but they also kept themselves distinct, with their own way of dressing, their own alphabet, and their own government. This refusal to assimilate would, in part, lead to their forced relocation and present-day problems, but it's also why Cherokee culture survived when a lot of other Native American cultures didn't. Incidentally, the reason I'm using the Cherokee as an example is because Jacob Demois does the same thing in the book. Something else that's interesting about Sundiver is that it's not just about what happens to the humans after first contact, it's also about what happens to the aliens. Humans have to strike a balance between maintaining their identity and catching up with a larger community, but the aliens have to figure out what to do about this completely unexpected species. The Galactic Society has gone millions of years without a surprise. Then, all of a sudden, there's the impossible humans, a species that not only achieve spaceflight without any help, They also uplifted 2 other species, and they've been giving them almost equal rights, rather than expecting them to be a slave species for the next few 100,000 years. And now they've discovered a whole new form of life that the Galactic Library doesn't know about. The colonizer's dilemma is represented by 2 institutions: the Galactic Library, which records all knowledge and literature, and the Institute of Progress, which has the job of identifying and preserving new ideas. The alien who represents the library wants to sabotage and humiliate humanity so that our species will learn its place, and he wants to sell us knowledge and technology that will force us to rely on the Galactic Society and rack up a big debt that will keep us subservient. But the alien from the Institute of Progress wants to help humanity succeed because the new approaches and the new ideas we offer could make Galactic Society as a whole much stronger. Another big theme of Sundiver, and of the Uplift universe in general, is the treatment of the unequal. The purpose of uplifting is to take a species that shows promise but is not on your level and improve them until they are your equals. In the Galactic Society, this uplift process incurs a debt that the uplifted species pays off with hundreds of thousands of years of obedient servitude. This servitude supposedly comes with a time limit, but quite often the servant species has to find allies and go to war against their masters to secure their independence. Humanity's approach is much more egalitarian. Uplifted chimps and dolphins don't have exactly the same rights as humans, but that's only because the uplift process isn't over yet. As it is, the neo-chimpanzee in Sundiver is treated as an equal, and he's a good friend of the project leader. He shares his honest opinions, and he argues with the humans he hates, and in the rest of the Galactic Society, those are not things that an indentured species is allowed to do. As a result of this different approach, chimps and dolphins have a good relationship with humans in future stories, and both species are able to make their mark on Galactic Society much sooner than a normal indentured species could. So the lesson here would be that, while exploitation helps the exploiters, equality and open-mindedness help everyone. Thanks for joining me again for today's Threadbare review, and I hope I'll see you next time. Until then, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and if you have a little extra money to spare, you can support me on Patreon. Link in the description.